What's up, everybody? Welcome into Hockey Sense. Great to have you along with us as always. Brought to you by First Community. It's the summer edition. Not much going on right now, I know. This is truly the dog days, but we're going to get into a number of different topics here on this edition of Hockey Sense brought to you by First Community. Looking forward to it. Jammer will be here. We'll talk it over with Jamal Mayers, find some interesting things to talk about. I mean, there's some restricted free agents that are still out there, unsigned. Cutter Gauthier as an example. You know what's interesting, which isn't getting a ton of talk, is this Cale Makar situation, which I wouldn't even call it a situation. I don't think anyone out there thinks that there's a chance that Colorado won't get it done. But the fact that he's in a negotiation, it's probably not getting as much play as a Quinn Hughes, maybe because Hughes has two brothers playing in the NHL. He was traded from another team. There's a lot of pressure on Minnesota to get him signed because of the trade, who they gave up to get him, and how much they're relying on, or their future is reliant on Quinn Hughes being a part of things. They signed Kaprizov to $17 million. Nobody saw this Carlson situation taking place where he was going to get $18 million. Now you have Celebrini getting 18.8. Well, now Quinn Hughes is up for a negotiation, and if he wanted to, he could certainly demand to be the highest paid player in the game, not just the highest paid defenseman in the game. And then you have Cale Makar. Well, he could certainly make a case that he should be the highest paid player in the game as well. Certainly the highest paid defenseman in the game. Hughes is negotiating. Makar is negotiating. Who's going to blink first? Who wants to sign first? Between those two, that's interesting. But with Hughes, again, the heartstrings are being pulled. Do you want to go play with your brothers? Do you want to sign long term, 3-year deal, 5-year deal? What are we looking at with Minnesota and Quinn Hughes? So those are the interesting scenarios that are involved with his deal. I thought that Quinn Hughes' deal would be done by now. I thought it was kind of a given that there was an agreement. He came there, hey, yeah, I want to sign. I want to be here long term. I'm going to sign. And it's not going to be a knockout, drag out type of negotiation. And I don't want to characterize it as that, but the fact that he isn't signed yet tells us that things have not gone as smoothly or as quickly as both sides maybe thought that it would, or certainly the side that Billy Guerin and the Minnesota Wild thought that it would. Just the fact that he's not signed. Who would you pay more? I think Makar should get more, don't you think? He's been a Norris Trophy finalist for like 6 straight years. He's won a couple of Norris Trophies. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's won a 4 Nations. I know he didn't win the gold medal. He was actually on the ice when Jack Hughes scored the game winner for Team USA. But I don't think anybody would sit here and say Quinn Hughes should make more than Cale Makar. So Joe Sakic had said earlier in the offseason that they'll get it done. But if it doesn't get done before the beginning of the regular season, then you just wonder where things are at. It's interesting. This defenseman in Carolina, Nikishin, a lot of people are getting their hopes up or certainly paying attention to Nikishin. I'm interested to see how it goes. He's 24 years of age, and whenever you have a player of his talent level looking to be moved, there is a red flag there. He stayed over in Russia. We're talking about Alexander Nikishin. He stayed over in Russia a little bit longer than I think people anticipated, or maybe Carolina had hoped. They maybe thought that they would get him over here a little bit earlier, but it always comes down to money with this guy. Now he wants more money. It's not good enough, and you're going to have to pay him a lot of money. And I don't want to say buyer beware, but, whenever a player with his level of experience, or lack of experience, maybe I should say, because of his age, even though he's a Stanley Cup winner, whenever they want a trade or a team's looking to move on from him, I get a little weary. So I know St. Louis has been connected to Nikishin. We'll see where that goes. Blues have a lot of defensemen right now. I was talking to somebody who played with Brandon Carlo a few years ago, and they spoke really highly of him, and got me a little bit more excited for a guy like Carlo to come to St. Louis. Not a skilled guy. He's not the best defenseman with the puck on his stick. He's not going to wow you with plays. He's going to fumble pucks at the offensive blue line. That's going to lead to a 2-on-1. He's going to make some mistakes there, but he'll break up a lot of plays in the neutral zone. and he's going to break up a lot of plays in the D zone. He's got a long stick. He plays with length. He's got good size, good penalty killer. Um, he's kind of what the Blues really need, to be honest with you. It's a little bit of an under the radar move for Alexander Steen and the Blues. We'll see how it plays out, and how it plays out for a guy like Tyler Tucker. Um, because you've got Fowler here, Lindstein. As long as Lindstein makes the team, you have Tucker in the mix, who brings an element that a lot of guys don't on the roster. You have Ross Johnston here now, but certainly on the back end, you don't have a player like him, Tucker. It's kind of nice to have that in the lineup. He can be a little bit inconsistent, but when he's on his game, we've seen what it looks like a couple years ago down the stretch and into the playoffs. This guy was playing his best hockey of his career, and earned the right to be on the roster when the season started last year and to get as many games as he did a year ago. And then you have Urasek. So I thought Carlo was brought here to really provide some insurance in case Urasek isn't ready. Talking to a player personnel guy earlier, it's always interesting how teams put together rosters. And whenever you have a young player, there's a lot of risk in leaving a hole in your roster as you enter a season, truly thinking or believing or wanting to believe that that young player can fill the hole. You can't go into a season with a hole in your lineup. And as much as I want Urasek to make the team and to be a player this year, I don't think the Blues could go into the season without truly knowing what he's going to look like come training camp, preseason, and if he's really going to be ready. You have to protect yourself. You can't leave yourself with a glaring hole entering the season. I think bad teams do that. Bad general managers do that. And teams that lose consistently do that. They're just expecting the young kid to come in and play now. You can pencil him in, but you got to have some reinforcements in case it doesn't go as planned. And I think that's what the Blues have done. They've given themselves some insurance in case Urasek isn't quite ready. But with that being said, if he is ready, the Blues are going to have an abundance of players. Somebody's going to have to go. You got 8 defensemen right now that you could certainly say could very easily make this team. And on the back end, you are forward, up front, I should say. You have some question marks there with the addition of Ross Johnston. We had Oscar Sundqvist on with us last week. Is he going to make the team? He's got a 2-way deal. Where does this leave, guys like Nathan Walker? You've got Finley coming back. You've got Toropchenko in the fold. You've got Ross Johnston in the fold. You've got Sonny. You've got Otto Stenberg. Pius Suter, you're going to have to find a spot for him. He's going to be in your lineup. Dvorsky, all these guys. Problem is, they're all kind of bottom 6 guys. Trying to plug in a bunch of bottom 6 guys. It's not like a abundance of goal scoring or a bunch of speed or a bunch of top 6 guys. You're just trying to put your pieces together in terms of what your fourth line might look like or your bottom 6. All really good players and all NHL players, though. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll talk it over with Jamal, too, coming up in just a few minutes. Steve Simmons is going to join us from the Toronto Sun. Looking forward to that. There's a documentary out called Game Day Murders, and it's on HBO Max. And Investigation Discovery, I believe. It's called the ID Network, but you can find it on HBO Max. Mike Danton, you remember back in 2004, played for the Blues, 2003, 2004 season, gets arrested during the playoffs in San Jose in 2004. And I covered that story extensively, participated in this documentary. Check it out. Let me know what you think if you watched it already. But Steve Simmons was also in there. He's written books on the whole Danton-Frost dynamic in the past. He covered that story extensively prior to him coming to the NHL and prior to Danton getting to the St. Louis Blues, where my coverage of the story was primarily after he was arrested. Obviously, I covered him as a player here, but after he was arrested, did I really jump on that story where Simmons was introduced to the story at a much earlier age, considering his time in Toronto and where Simmons operates out of in Ontario, following the junior hockey circuit there, and certainly exposed Frost and everybody in terms of what was going on. So I got a lot of questions for Steve. We've never really talked about the case, even though we were both knee deep into it, neck deep into it, really. So it should be a fun conversation coming up with Steve Simmons. Looking forward to that. All right, First Community brings us Hockey Sense each and every week. Find the location near you, find the branch nearest you, and do your banking the right way. Do it with First Community, and sign your son or daughter up for the Little Blues program. It's the best program going. Little Blues. You want to introduce your son or daughter to the game of ice hockey? Do it with the Little Blues program. All your equipment comes with it, head to toe, helmets to skates. You even get a stick. You don't have to go to the hockey shop and buy little Johnny or little Susie all new gear. It all comes with it. And do the Little Blues Pro. I always tell parents, do Little Blues, and then you can decide before you invest thousands and thousands of dollars into the sport, into the game of ice hockey. You can decide if you want to sign them up. Do they like it? Do they not like it? You'll know pretty quickly if they like it or not. And if they don't like it right away, get them back out there, because eventually they will. And then when they're old enough to really make that decision on their own, I think you have to listen to your kid. My kid now is he's 10 years old playing. Yeah, loves the game, loves the sport. But Little Blues was just a great way to get involved. I had somebody ask me the other day, well, I hear there's, kids are just kind of all over. They're 4 years old, and they have great coaches out there, and they're teaching them. It's like, let them have fun. This is where you stand at the glass and you wave, hi, and the kid smiles. And like, once they smile, you know that it was worth it for that particular skate. But then they learn things too, and they get better as the program goes along each and every week. So this is for kids ages 4 through 9 who have never had any hockey experience in the past. I had somebody call me the other day. What do I do? How do I get my kid? I want to start. He said, he looks really good. I said, how old is he? He said, 3 years old. I'm like, oh, geez. That's when you lose me. Let him get out there. Let him have some fun. At 3 years old, you're telling me how good he is at 3 years old. Pump the brakes. Let him get out there and truly get associated and learn the game. You don't want to be the best 3-year-old anyway. You don't want to be the best 4-year-old, really even the best 5-year-old. Chances are you're the best 4-year-old, you're the best 5-year-old. You're not the best 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old. It just doesn't typically work like that. So if your kid's not the best at 5, if he's not the best at 4, it's going to be okay. First Community, though. They got the jersey rights now for SIUE, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. So big shout out, congratulations, Glenn Barks, always getting it done. Nobody supports hockey. Nobody supports sports like SIUE. Or excuse me, well, them too. But First Community. First Community putting their name on all of SIUE's jerseys, man. We love that. And big sponsor of the Blues. They bring you the St. Louis Hockey Hall of Fame, which, by the way, is coming up next weekend. We've got the St. Louis Hockey Hall of Fame. Patty Maroon's going to be going in. Donnie Lux is going in. John Gilbert is going in. Mike Zook is going in. I apologize. I'm going to forget some people. I don't have the whole list in front of me. But I'll be hosting that event once again. Always a great event at the St. Charles Convention Center. The St. Louis Amateur Hockey Hall of Fame. Great event. And great to have Patty Maroon being inducted this season. Dirt Cheap Fun Fun, your one-stop party shop. Download the app and do it today. Find the location nearest you. I mean, the Wallace family, what don't they do here in St. Louis? Are you kidding me? I love these dirt cheap locations, man. They've got the best selection of beer, wine, and booze. Don't sleep on the party supplies, the paper goods, the napkins, all the forks and spoons and plastic knives and all that type of stuff that you need for your barbecues, for your parties. Are you having back-to-school parties? I mean, these fall bonfires are going to be going before you know it, and I can't wait for that. That is my favorite time of year. I'll be in my backyard in the hot tub from Spas and More, hanging out, looking at the stars and enjoying some cooler weather. I can't wait for that. Hockey season's right around the corner. By the way, you'll learn more about the TV situation with the Blues coming up very soon. I think that's starting to kind of shape into form, and so looking forward to an announcement from the Blues coming up on that, because I know a lot of people are asking those questions each and every week here on Hockey Sense. But Dirt Cheap Fun Fun, download the app today. You get free delivery if you live within 10 miles. All the great deals that you find are only available on the app. So get the app and get it today. Dirt Cheap Fun Fun, your one-stop party shop, baby. Blue Note Roofing, 314-920-5713. You see the phone number over my shoulder. Call David Novak today. Talk some pucks with him. Get your roof looked at. Do you have storm damage, hail damage, any type of damage? He'll take amazing care of you. David Novak with Blue Note Roofing. He is the absolute man. 314-920-5713. People are saying on YouTube that we should do a collab. I should get on a roof with David Novak. I don't know if that's a good idea. DV, David Novak, 314-920-5713. Gutters, soffit, fascia, whatever it is you're looking for. He will take amazing care of you at Blue Note Roofing, 314-920-5713. Uh-oh, better get Mako. That's right. You know, I just sent another listener, I should say, to Mako in Kirkwood, where they have well over 70 years of experience at that store alone. Mako in general, over 100 years of experience. Specializing in cosmetic collision repair and auto painting, so they're fully capable of repairing any collision damage. But they focus on drivable hits, which allows them to turn around repairs as quickly as possible. They've got an amazing working relationship with all the insurance providers and the fleet management companies. So that's all taken care of. You can rest easy knowing they got the relationship with the insurance companies. They give you a free written estimate. It can be scheduled on the phone, online, or you can just stop on in. Anytime Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5 p.m. So they offer that best price guarantee, which you got to love, and they stand by that. Nationwide warranty on all Class A insurance repairs, good as long as you own the vehicle, which is incredible service. So they stand behind that. 840 South Kirkwood Road in Kirkwood, 314-821-4433. Tell them we sent you, 314-821-4433. Tell them we sent you from Hockey Sense. On-site estimates are available for a $50 fee, which goes towards the final balance anyway. So it's not like you're paying out of pocket for that. Stop on in, get the estimate, get it today. Lordo's Diamonds. Get that special someone, something special in your life from Lordo's Diamonds. LordosDiamonds.com. Mike and Jimmy Lordo, the best in the business. Are you looking to pop the question? They've got the best selection of engagement rings anywhere at Lordo's Diamonds, right there in the heart of Ladue. 314-432-8008. 314-432-8008 for Lordo's Diamonds. They've got great selection of men's jewelry, too. If you're looking for watches, chains, all that type of stuff, they've got that. They've been around for 70 years. They have the best customer service. If you walk in there with a $500,000 budget, you're going to get treated the exact same way if you walk in there with a $500 budget or a $100 budget. No judgment there from Mike and Jimmy Lordo, the absolute best. Right next to Truffles, you can't miss it, in the heart of Ladue. 314-432-8008. You want to give them a call before you stop in, go ahead and do so, or feel free to stop in. A St. Louis institution, Lordo's Diamonds, baby. All right, let's step aside. We got lots more coming up here on this edition of Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. Don't go anywhere. All right, good to have Jamal Mayers with us here on Hockey Sense once again. This is the dog days. This is the dog days.
Are you sponsored by Viore now too? Like, holy cow, you just got, like, you're branded out everywhere. It's unbelievable.
No, but you know what? Like,
should be.
I should be. I kind of get like that. Whenever I buy clothes, it's like once or twice a year. And it's like, if I find one thing I like, you know, I just...
In 4 colors?
I just get it in 4 colors. Exactly right. Basically.
That's all right. That's why we have Awesome Wise, right? Help us out.
Oh, my God. Yeah. That's true. That's very true. You've been through an awful lot. I got to say that. And I don't know how much you want to get into, but, like, I mean, when you have kids who play sports, I mean, injuries are part of it.
Yep.
And I think it's tougher on the parents than it is the kids, to be honest with you.
It's tough on both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that... I think you're speaking about a couple of things that, you know, my younger daughter, Harper, joined Langley at Kansas State. And in practice, broke her leg. So
how do you get that call?
We get the call that...
she calls you, or somebody from...
Her sister was with her, obviously, in the trainer. And and she had to have surgery 4 days later. So,
okay.
But she's on the mend, and that's good. And then we're up in Chicago getting ready for... Just finished the team camp, and then it kind of fed into CCM 68 for crew, and wakes me up in the middle of the night complaining of abdominal pain. And having gone through that with my oldest daughter 2 years ago, who had an appendectomy, that's exactly what happened. And 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, he's having surgery. So he's on the mend and doing well and at home and resting, but crazy few weeks.
Yeah. So get healthy, Harper and crew. Well, it is something that, like, what would you share to parents out there? Like, because kids all the time, they say their stomach hurts. How do
Mm.
you know the difference between a stomach ache and something more serious? And I guess your intuition, because you've been through it with your daughter,
Yeah,
you're probably glad that you did what you did, which was go to the hospital and not to say go back to bed.
that's a great question. I think that you just have a parent instinct that it sounded different. Um, and I think that what's the worst thing that could happen if I get up at 2 in the morning and
Mm,
take him to the hospital, it's a false alarm, and I go back to bed at 4. Like,
exactly.
that's not terrible.
No.
Like, it's not ideal, but I would I knew that if the appendix burst, that could be catastrophic. So I wasn't having gone through that experience with our oldest daughter, I knew that information. I was not gonna play around. I was just gonna
Mm.
get to the hospital and
And you're not in St. Louis, right? So
yeah,
you don't even know where to go right off the bat,
that was
right?
tricky, right? It's 2 in the morning and you don't know where you
Now your wife's a nurse. Does now
it didn't help because she didn't answer the phone, so
she did.
but so, like, honestly, I just put children's hospital in
Okay.
the phone
Were you close by?
in 10, 12 minutes, so
Okay, good.
yeah.
Right. Um, man, I gotta ask you, we're gonna have Steve Simmons coming on this Mike Danton documentary that's out there right now. You were on the team
Yeah, that was
in 2003, 2004. Was that the year you were injured or no? Or were you playing that
no, I was
year?
playing.
You're playing that year.
I think we ended up losing out, and there was a big commotion, from what I remember. It's a little bit foggy, it's a long time ago.
Hmm.
And Ryan Johnson was his roommate, and I think there was
I think Mark Rycroft may have been the roommate for
okay,
that
but
particular
oh, that on that trip?
on that
Okay.
trip, but he and RJ were a lot of times too.
They were, and then I just remember just a massive commotion trying to find him and talking about it on the plane and what the heck happened, and it's really I think it's a sad story, to be honest with you, the way that everything happened, because I liked him. He was a good teammate, played hard, and unfortunately was misled.
Hmm. And so now having kids that go through it, like, could you imagine, like, just like turning your kid over to a agent and like, I mean, like, it's a message for the parents. I think it's sometimes parents, like, you chase the dream, you get blinded by maybe the warning signs. And I can't just put it all on Steve Jefferson either for allowing, like, because other parents were doing it too. There was like 3 other kids that he was, with all the time with David Frost. So sometimes you feel like you trust somebody and you gotta really know, which is sometimes is easier said than done.
Yeah, it's just awful. I think that, I don't know if there's a message necessarily for parents and what they could have done differently. I think that you laid it out perfectly well. I think you just sometimes you trust the wrong people,
Yeah.
and you hope that you have that open conversation with your kids, that they'll come to you when something doesn't feel right.
Well, that's
And I
it,
think that's the
exactly.
biggest thing. I think that's my biggest takeaway is, like, you wanna even if it's not me, I always say, "I hope they go talk to
Mhm.
my wife," or even if it's not me, I hope they go talk to their sibling,
Yeah.
or maybe it's someone that they trust,
Mhm.
a therapist or whoever it is. I just hope they have someone that they feel like they can
Yeah.
go to.
And parents shouldn't be like, listen, parents who are getting ready to send their kid off to junior hockey or whatever for the first time. I mean, most of these billet families, I mean, just about all of them are great people. They're vetted by the organizations.
Yes.
He wasn't a billet. He was a coach.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, it's very tricky when a person has power over your future and your goal is to play in the National Hockey League. It changes the dynamic of things, and, I think anytime there's a control or perceived control or of over your future, it's gonna change the dynamic. So I think that has a lot to do with how that ended up playing out.
did Mike hang out with you guys a lot, like on the road? Like, would he come out to dinner? Would you guys, do you spend time with him? I mean, like, did you see anything that was unusual?
Well, come now in hindsight, I do remember this. I love having the guys together. I certainly don't want to have 16 guys at a dinner,
Hmm.
but if there are 16 guys, we'll split the tables up to two groups of 8. I think it's very important to get together and have dinner and break bread and be around your teammates. I learned that from the veterans that I was around. at the beginning of my career, and that I carried on and passed on to guys like Luke Shen, who now is the guy who's organizing the
Yeah.
dinners, and
Yeah.
I think it's important. So we always included everybody, including Mike Danton, and I think that he never came, but I never stopped asking him. Said lobby 7:15, lobby 6:45. Dance, you in? No, I don't think so. Come to find out, he would then say, "Hey, the guys are inviting me to dinner. I think you're wrong. They really do want to hang out with me." And then he got told, "No, that's not." They're just he got told negativity, but I never gave up. We always, and it's not just me. Other guys would ask too.
Mhm.
We never stopped asking him, and I know that if you asked him today, he'd say, "You're right. I should have just one of those few times. If he'd just gone to dinner with us,
Mhm.
maybe something he would have realized. Like we're on his side. We like him. He's a great player. A lot of potential. Um, we're there to help each other. We're teammates. You know, um, that's the biggest part that still bugs me. It's like I wish he would have come out to dinner a couple times and was able to experience that, because I think he was told, to give you some background, having found out, he was told from Frost that, oh, those guys don't like you. They don't really want to hang out with you. That's why you have to stay with me and hang out with me and not do anything but be around me. And that really wasn't true.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate that he didn't over time see that are
Yeah.
consistently asking him, to me, was like, he's got to say once,
Yeah.
yes, one time, right?
Right. And he knows what it's like to be on a team. I don't know if he was ever really felt like he was one of the boys on any of the teams that he played on, really from 14, 15 years of age and up, because he was always with Frost. You know
Great
what I
point.
mean?
And he got success, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so you have to understand too, it, he got to where would he have gotten there anyway? I believe he would have.
Mhm.
But because he got there under that guise,
Yeah. He
he
believed in
probably
his
believed that's
philosophy.
why he was there.
Yeah. Um, that's interesting. Because Steve Simmons, who we're gonna have on, he talks about in the show about how after games that that Frost would tell Danton's dad how bad he played. He played terrible. He played terrible. So then the dad would say to Mike, "You weren't good. You got to get better." But then Frost would tell Mike, "No, you were great today. You played great." "Oh, is that what your dad's telling you? Oh, your dad's telling you played terrible? See, that's why you shouldn't talk to him. He's telling you played terrible. You played great today." So he played these mind games, and he was able to be very successful in doing so. I'll never forget sitting at the kitchen table with Steve Jefferson in Brampton, Ontario, and Mike's dad, and he had the best line ever, and in their backyard was a big field of like wildflowers, and it wasn't like some pretty scene, but they had like some wildflowers in the backyard off to a distance. And he said, "You see that field of wildflowers?" I said, "Yeah." Or no, it was a swamp. I'm sorry, it was like a swampy field. He goes, "You see that swamp behind us?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "David Frost could tell you that's a field of wildflowers, and you'll believe it." He could tell you that swamp in my backyard is a field of wildflowers, and everyone would believe it. So, and I talked to David Frost. I can't tell you how many times. I mean, hours and hours and hours and hours. And I could 1000% could see how he could take control over a young kid, because he tried it with everyone. So, yeah, you just got to be on the lookout though. If you're a parent, do the best that you possibly can,
Yeah.
and make sure you're.
I haven't seen the show, but have do they do a accurate
I think they did a pretty good
good job?
job. I mean, like, it's a series, you know what I'm saying? So there's so much more to the story. Mike hasn't spoken yet. Like he wasn't part of the show. Didn't want to participate. I think he wanted to be paid a good amount of money, which I don't blame him. If I'm going to if I'm him, I'm going to tell my story. I better be getting compensated for it. Um, and so there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I've got a lot of audio and stuff like that I just haven't turned over yet for whatever reason. Also, that I think would be really of interest um, to the audience. I just didn't feel like it was right to do so yet for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe I should just hand it over and let a producer go to work with it. But I just feel like there's going to be a right time for that. So I don't know how many
Or maybe
more.
you give it to Mike and he gets to
Yeah,
sell it.
yeah. So I don't know how many of these type of documentaries will come. This is the first one like this. There's been other stories and stuff like that, but really it hasn't. No one's revisited it in quite some time. So
Yeah, I think there is a story left to be told, which is
yeah,
his story.
his story. But for whatever reason, he hasn't. It's like he wants everyone to believe that he was trying to kill his father and not David Frost. So it's like and no one's buying that. I mean, he took a picture of David Frost and gave it to the bouncer outside of the jail, or not outside of the strip club, I should say, and said, "Hey, this is who I want you to take out." Essentially, I mean, so he's confirmed it there. And the reality is, if that individual would have taken Mike Danton up on his offer and said, "Okay, I'll do it," then David Frost would have been murdered. He would have been killed. Instead, he asked Katie Wolfmeyer, who happened to be with a friend of hers, who she said, "Hey, will you do this?" And he happens to work for a police department as a dispatcher. And so he takes interest of it, goes back to the police station, talks to people at the police station, said, "Hey, this guy who plays for the Blues wants this guy killed at his house." Never mentioned who it was, his agent or whatever. But so then they wired him and it was all framed and everything. So, but just think if the bouncer would have taken him up on his offer for $10,000, who he had the best line in the courtroom, by the way, Ronald Jones, when during the trial, they were like, "Well, so what did you say when he offered you $10,000?" He goes, "I looked at him and I said, $10,000? That's not even going to pay for my lawyer." And even the judge got a little chuckle out of that one. So anyway, check it out, HBO Max. Um, before we let you go, there's going to be a lot of decisions that have to be made. The Blues have like an abundance of players. We had Oscar Sundqvist on last week. You got Ross Johnston coming in. Sundqvist on a two-way. You got Toropchenko. You got Nathan Walker. You got Otto Stenberg. You have all these guys, in addition to Jack Finley and Toropchenko. I think I said his name. So when you're a guy competing for a fourth line spot, how do you earn that spot in training camp?
Well, I think the dynamic has changed a little bit, but I think what you want to first of all provide is energy. You have to play with pace. You have to play with a certain amount of physicality. You have to be responsible defensively. I think Jack Finley gets the nod ahead of a lot of those guys because he's proficient at faceoffs. Having a right shot faceoff guy is every team needs one. It'll allow you to play in certain situations, chew up a couple extra minutes of ice time on other lines just by taking the faceoffs. Um, I think that they're going to look for guys that can play with pace, guys that can, perhaps even come in and out of the lineup and be bumped up a little bit. So I'm not making those decisions, but that's my assumption. As it's changed a little bit. The fourth line needs to have a certain level of skill that can be bumped up to the second
Mm.
line. You might not play every night, but you might find yourself on the fourth line. You might find yourself, depending on how the game's going, playing a few shifts with the second line. So there might be a player like that. I think there's probably two or three that fit that mold that aren't quite top six, but make the team as a fringe guy, but then can play up in the lineup. I think that what I do like about what I've seen is that they're yeah, they did sign Sundqvist, but he's on a two-way. Probably the understanding he's not going to be here the whole year. I think he's okay with that. My assumption is he'll play half the games and play some games in the minors, but he gets to keep playing.
Mhm.
And I think the hope is that they're projecting some of these younger players to take up that
Yeah.
job by the end of the year.
Yeah, you have Jonathan Berggren too, so it'll be interesting. And on the back end, then you still have, your second. Yeah, I had a player development guy. I said this earlier before you came on, who told me, last thing you can't afford anymore in today's NHL just to leave a hole in your lineup going into training camp thinking a young guy's going to fill it. It's like you have to almost fill that hole. And then if he shows that he can play, then you make a decision on what you do after that. But you can't go into a season with a hole in your lineup thinking a young player is going to jump up and fill that hole. And then all of a sudden, if he shows that he's not ready, now you go into a year and you got a hole in your lineup, which is tough to overcome. So it's interesting, but like they got 8 defensemen. You bring in Brandon Carlo, you've got Tyler Tucker, you got Jurasek, who they hope obviously can take a step. So it's and I think Carlos brought here for insurance in case Jurasek isn't ready. He'll give you that because you still have Fowler on your. And Lindstein, obviously, he's a big wild card too, assuming that he shows that he can still play. So a lot of decisions need to be made in a shortened training camp, Jammer.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see what how Steiner changes the approach and puts his stamp on things. I think that's probably honestly the most exciting thing. I think he's ready for this. We've talked about it a lot, but you can't understate the fact that he's held every seat, right? He's been on every part. I think that experience has given him a great understanding and it eliminates excuses for the group. And I think he can speak honestly to everybody in that room what they need to do to get them back in the playoffs, which should be the main focus into this year.
Yeah. Okay. Who brought you to Hockey Sense today? Brought to you by First Community.
Yeah, obviously we got to talk about Dobbs, family owned. You know, they're an unbelievable family owned company that has over 40 locations in St. Louis. And it doesn't matter what you drive, a car, light truck, van, SUV, hybrid, or EV, they'll get your car in, they'll diagnose it, they'll get you in the correct tires. They'll tell you, you know what? You don't need the brand name ones. You can get into these exact tire that you need. What is your plan? Are you planning on getting tires again for the winter? Do you use these all season? They'll have that conversation. They'll replace two. They don't need to replace all four. They're not going to do that. They will make sure you're in a budget-friendly tire. They have constant deals all the time. They're great people. They'll get your car in, up, fixing out the same day. Go to Dobbs.com for more.
There you go. And what about spas and more? Who puts the eye on spa?
Well, I'll tell you what, super excited to have them on board because I am all set with my cold tub, my sauna, and my hot tub. They're a local master spas dealer with 2 locations, Sunset Hills in Missouri and Overland Park in Kansas. That Mike Leahy's the owner. His daughter, Angie Hess, takes care of everything. She's unbelievable. She takes care and runs that Sunset Hills location. Spas and More offers high-quality hot tubs, swim spas, cold tubs, infrared saunas for everyone's health and wellness and relaxation needs. Turn your backyard into the oasis of your dreams with a master spas from Spas and More. Spas and More located at 12957 Gravois Road in Sunset Hills, where we put the awe in spa.
Great stuff, Jammer, as always.
Thanks, bud.
Tell the kids to heal up.
I know. I know. It's been a tough few weeks, but we'll get through it.
All right, thanks
it's all
for
good.
coming in. Always
Appreciate it, bud.
All right, always great to have be able to catch up with a lot of different people who've been doing this for a long, long time. Some people are new to the game. Some people have been around for decades, covering the great game of hockey and covering a lot of different things. Steve Simmons from the Toronto Star. You've been a columnist there for how long? Toronto Sun, I should say. Toronto Sun.
40 years for there. And in all, it's 46 years of writing sports in Canada.
Well, what's your?
So I think
go ahead.
Right now, I'm the longest serving sports columnist from one paper in North America.
Really? You know, so many of the like legendary sports columnists down here in the States that kind of transitioned into television. And you saw that with Around the Horn and these different shows and whatnot. And I know you've always dabbled in different mediums. What is it about the print aspect that's always kept you driven to continue to do that and not branch out and do something different?
I have done television. I have done radio. I spent 15 really, really great years with TSN, which is sort of the ESPN equivalent of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've done a fair bit of television and radio, but I know what I am, and what I am. I'm a writer, and I'm a journalist, and I'm a columnist, and I've been doing it for a really long time. And it's funny, trade deadline just passed in baseball, and I still get passionate about those kind of days, about when there's something important to write. And so it's really, I don't know, I'm still engaged. And the fact that I'm still engaged at the age that I'm at, and after this many years, you know, it tells me it's not. Everyone always asks me, "When are you quitting?" I'm quitting the day I wake up, and one of two things happens. One, nobody's reading, which we get tracked on that on a daily basis, so I know exactly what my readership is. And number two is that I just don't have interest, and if I don't have interest or can't put the column together, then I'll walk away.
So there's a little squabble going on right now down here in the States between Michael Wilbon, who's a longtime columnist, who I'm sure you've crossed paths with over the years, and Stephen A. Smith, because Wilbon's saying, hey, Stephen A. Smith, you know, you were a journalist back when you were with the Philadelphia Inquirer, and now what you're doing isn't journalism. And Stephen A. Smith's like, no, I'm still a journalist. So, like, where do you stand on not necessarily that debate, but do you feel like a lot of columnists and a lot of journalists maybe have lost that journalistic integrity with the direction that sports media has gone in?
Well, I think the entire American ESPN television culture of let's argue about the same things every single day, to me gets really tiresome. And so the Stephen A. Smiths, we call him Screaming A here, and often the kind of things he screams about don't resonate much in Canada. The NBA, his Dallas Cowboys fetish, whatever, the Knicks, all that. And so he's not a huge figure here. I would think Wilbon, because PTI is on every day across Canada, is probably a larger figure in Canada and probably a more respected figure because, he's a reasonable thinking, not screaming at you, um, journalist who, to me was one of the better columnists when he worked for the Washington Post that we had in the industry. And so, I always like to tell people that, I worked with and around Mike Wilbon, and I'm proud to say that. And some of the best events of my life have been working in and around Mike Wilbon. Not that we're friends or anything like that, but just that, and I'll say the same for Tony Kornheiser. With Tony Kornheiser, when he wrote the column for the Washington Post, was one of the 10 or 12 best columnists in America. And so I always think those are the guys I wanted to be when I was starting out in the industry. And, here they are still doing what they do. And here I am still doing what I do. So somebody's doing something right.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. So, I mean, you're in Canada. So is it automatic if you had a choice to go cover Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final versus Game 7 of the World Series or Game 7 of the NBA Finals or a Super Bowl, that it's hockey all the way? Or would you maybe surprise us with your answer?
Well, I would have surprised you with the answer maybe a year ago, but when the World Series came here last year and the Blue Jays played the Dodgers, and it was a spectacular World Series, and it was a Game 7 that nobody will ever forget. Like, it's one of the great Game 7s that have ever been played.
Ever, yeah.
And so this country went crazy, and it got everybody's blood, back into baseball as much as we've ever been into baseball and loving baseball. I mean, it's always been a good baseball town. Toronto and Canada is a great baseball country, but hockey's our blood. Hockey's what we are. Like, if you think about, Canada playing the U.S. for the gold medal in the Olympics is as big a sporting event as we're going to have in this country. I mean, the World Cup brought in really large numbers for soccer in a small sort of sample size. But, that kind of Canada, US, Canada, Russia hockey, we've all grown up with that. And, I always say, the first thing a guy gets in his crib, his mother gives him a bottle, and the second thing you get is a little hockey stick. and so we all grew up, wanting to be bad hockey player. I used to play in my driveway in public school, and we would take shots every single day at lunch. That we played hockey every day at lunch, and if I was in goal, I was always Glenn Hall, and I wanted to be Glenn Hall, and I was a Leafs fan as a kid growing up, but I don't know what it was about Glenn Hall, the goalie. He just, I got to know him later in life, which was kind of a neat thing. Because sometimes you meet your heroes,
Yeah.
and they don't turn out to be the greatest people or the greatest, things you want to be around. Well, I got to meet Glenn Hall and got to know him when he was the goalie coach of the Calgary Flames, and he measured up in every way to the guy I used to be on the driveway.
Yeah, the Blues did a feature with him a few years back with Brian Sutter going to his house and Bobby Plager going to his house, and it was one of my favorite things that they put together. Somebody had some commentary the other day online, and I don't want to say blaming Gary Bettman, but they were like, "Can you believe Gary Bettman will go through his entire tenure as commissioner of the NHL potentially with only one Canadian team winning the Stanley Cup, and that was his first year in 1993." He's placing the blame on Gary for players flocking to southern states and some of the tax-free, advantages that come with it. Where do you stand on that? I mean, does Gary does he need a Canadian team to win another Stanley Cup before he's done for him to um, enhance his reputation as a commissioner?
Gary Bettman has been the most successful commissioner since Pete Rozelle in professional sports in North America. What he's done with a very small league is he's turned it into a rather large league. And what he's done with franchise value. I'll use the Columbus Blue Jackets because I happened to write about this recently. The Columbus Blue Jackets 17 years ago were, it's one of the great anonymous franchises in hockey. They were worth $300 million. They're now worth $1.3 billion.
I know, it's crazy.
So, Gary, if Canadian teams haven't won, it's because of their own incompetence over the years. And really, I can only think of one team in the past 30 years that I would say was the best team in hockey playing in Canada. And that was the Vancouver Canucks, I think, of 2011. And they should have won the Stanley Cup and lost to the Boston Bruins in the finals.
Yeah.
But if you go through it, since Montreal won in 93, Montreal's not had a Stanley Cup. They played for the Cup once. They've not had a team good enough. The Toronto Maple Leafs haven't been good enough. Ottawa hasn't been good enough. They played for the Cup as well. Vancouver played for the Cup. They were good enough. Edmonton went to Game 7, and I think twice at two different eras for the Stanley Cup. The second time they had a shot to come back against the Florida Panthers and wound up losing in Game 7. But it's not Gary Bettman's fault that, these teams are failing or not succeeding in the long term. Management. If he could manage all 7 Canadian teams, maybe they'd have a shot. But, we've had a lot of bad general managers and a lot of not so great coaches. And to me, yes, there are tax advantages. But guess what? Los Angeles won 2 Stanley Cups, same taxes as Toronto. New York's won the Stanley Cup, same taxes as Toronto. You go through it. Chicago won what? 3 Stanley Cups?
Yeah.
Tax situation. It's become a great convenient story for player agents. Yeah. And it's funny, it doesn't apply to any other sport. Why the taxes only factor in hockey? They don't factor in the NFL. They don't factor in our free agents going to the Los Angeles Rams, or are they going to Dallas because Dallas has the tax break,
or the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, Miami Dolphins are a joke. So you can go through this. It's not, and I've done this with other sports. There is no pattern. Free agents go to New York and LA in baseball.
Yeah,
they don't follow the taxes. It's only become it's a hockey story. And what people forget also, you come to Canada to play in the NHL, you're getting paid $1 that's 40% higher than the one you're living with.
I know.
Think about that. They're getting $1.40 for every dollar. So they're complaining about taxes. Their taxes are basically paid by the difference in the dollar.
Yeah. No, it's bizarre. And Jason Robertson just turned down over $100 million to a tax-free state in Washington. So, I mean, it's, it doesn't always fit the narrative.
Is Carolina tax-free, by the way?
They may have some tax. I'm trying to think. North Carolina, I think there may be some tax advantages. I don't know. If you know the answer.
Yeah, weather advantage.
Yeah.
I think weather may be a bigger factor in hockey these days because people don't want to be cold.
I know. And it's actually a very under the radar, underrated place to live. People love living in Raleigh. There's some great neighborhoods.
I've always said to my wife that if we were going to pick a place in the United States to live, North Carolina would be high on the list.
It's amazing. You get up in the mountains there too. It's incredible. South Carolina is amazing. You have more NHL people moving to South Carolina right now, all over. So, yeah, it's interesting. I like the way you put that. Toronto Maple Leafs. I was reading the other day. Somebody said this is maybe one of the best off seasons they've had in franchise history. I'm just curious where you stand on that. Is it too early to say that? And How much juice is there in the market for what's to come when the season begins in October?
Well, Toronto's a great hockey town in July and August. It's like, the off season is everything. And they've had a very high tempo off season accidentally and not accidentally.
Mhm.
I mean, they won the lottery, so that was complete luck that they didn't even bottom out properly during the season. They wind up winning the lottery. They get first pick of the draft, and hopefully Gavin McKenna turns out to be like a lot of first picks of the draft. A great player down the road, or maybe even a great player right away. So they did that. They're coming off a horrendous season. They fired the GM, they fired the coach, they fired the media relations director. They fired just about everybody you could fire, and
The trainer,
they
right?
they brought in a general manager, and I was very critical of the hiring, of that nobody else in the game would have hired. Like, he just wasn't up for any other jobs. It was like they were reaching beyond reaching to get John Chaika. And then John Chaika with Matt Sundin, a former Maple Leafs, a great Maple Leaf, who had no experience working in hockey management at all, left the NHL and went home to Sweden, and we haven't seen him since. Other than he comes back for Hall of Fame weekend and other things that happen. And all of a sudden, they're in charge, and like the first thing that happens is they win the lottery. They trade for. I love this deal. They traded for Darren Radish, the best free agent defenseman available. He's got an Al McGinnis slap shot. I'll give you a little St. Louis for that. My old friend Al.
He's the best.
Yeah. What?
He's
I go
the
back.
best, by the way.
I go back. I covered the Calgary Flames when he was a rookie.
Oh,
This is how far we.
I love it.
So they make a deal for Radish, the best free agent available, I think. Then they sign Sergei Bobrovsky, who may or may not still have something left. Two-time Stanley Cup champion, Vezina Trophy winner, one of the great goalies of the last 20 years. So now they have a goalie, and now they have a new kid coming in, and now they have a booming slapshot guy from the point. So they have things they didn't have before. They still have a roster that's really flawed. And they still have a roster where you don't know. They have a new coach, Jim Hiller, another guy that I don't think anybody in the NHL would have hired. So they have the GM no one would hire, and then they have the coach no one would hire. And now it's going to be interesting to see if these two guys, because we know the coach and the GM are the two most important people you start your season with. Are they the guys to bring you to the next level? Because they fell off the map last year. And can they come back? The East is pretty stacked in terms of depth. And so to be top 8 in the East is going to be a challenge. And I think it's going to be a challenge for the Leafs to be in that position. So yeah, fans are excited and fans are pumped, and they got, the great new kid and the old goalie and the big with the slap shot. They got lots of stuff. Still have Austin Matthews and William Nylander as your two best players. And in 10 years of Austin Matthews and William Nylander as two of your 3 best players, they had very good regular seasons and very crappy playoffs.
Yeah, and maybe the role players that they added that could be the best additions, with Sissons and Roslovic and some of these guys that they added too. So maybe you have a little extra depth,
Yeah, I think they added 4 guys who are almost the same guy. The third and fourth liners. I'm not sure where Roslovic's going to fit, but I'm looking at Sissons and the other fellows that they signed, and I'm thinking that one of those guys would have been a good signing, Bluger but $4 million for Sissons, who had 11 points last year. I think somewhere that Gary Bettman train has gone off the tracks a little bit here.
Possibly. Yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes. Listen, you got a lot of attention for your question at the press conference. I remember watching it live on our phone. I was with Cam Jansen at the time. We were watching it. We're like, oh, right when they say that, right when I heard your voice, I knew something was coming. And I'm curious, how does that work in Toronto? Do they call you afterwards? Are people pissed? Or do you hear from the Leafs? Do you hear from anybody there in Toronto, or they just take it and let it go?
No, I heard from Well, let me preface. I'm going to go back. We're standing around waiting for the press conference to start. And one of the people who was involved in the selection of John Chaiko walks into the room and he turns to a group of us and says, I just looked outside. The bomb squad isn't here, so we're okay.
Mm.
So they knew like that this could be electric. I don't know if they knew how electric it could possibly be, but they knew it could be. And I asked the question, I wanted to ask the question, did I word it exactly the way I wanted to word it? You get a do-over. I probably would change the wording slightly. And I always make this premise. I've written about 9,000 columns. The day after the column appears, there's not a column I've written where I wouldn't go back and change something.
Yeah, I hear you.
Change a sentence, move something around, move a paragraph. The question was, how did you pick this guy? And so I asked the question and probably asked it improperly, slightly. The tone, I have no problem with the tone. I have a problem with a couple of words I might have used. But it was never answered. And afterwards, I heard from somebody up high at the Leafs, and they were very, very upset. And they thought I crossed the line, and they thought I embarrassed myself. And it's funny because you never know in today's world, social media and whatever, every reaction is instant to everything. And normally when I get myself in these kind of circumstances, you'll get about, I always find it's about, social media is so full of hate that it's like 80% against you, 20% for you. This day was the opposite. It was like 90% for me, 10% against me, which gives you an example of, what Leaf Nation thinks of this hockey organization right now heading into, before John Chaiko was officially named. And so I golf a lot in the summer. Every golf course that I come across someone who recognizes me, the first thing I get is, boy, I'm happy you asked that. So on the one hand, it caused a stir.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the question I think needed to be asked. And the other thing is that, boy, did people appreciate the question? And I'm not just talking about like fans. I'm talking about media people. I'm talking about people in the industry. I got so many calls from agents and general managers and other people in the game. I'm watching a Stanley Cup playoff game, and the team I'm watching on television, I look at my phone, and it's the general manager's name because it comes on my phone. And I'm thinking, you're in the middle of a game here, and you're calling me to talk about the press conference. And so it hit, and it hit everywhere.
Yeah.
And, again, like I said, would I have changed a word or two? Yes. I don't. The question needed to be asked.
Did you hear from Chaika? Did you hear from Sundin? Have you talked to either of them since the press conference?
Only in the scrum situations that we've been like. After that press conference ended, they divided us up into two groups, and half of them went to Sundin, half of them went to Chaika, and then they switched. And so I've known Mats forever.
Yeah.
So we already have a relationship per se, and Chaika, I'm just getting to know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, in the press conference there that day, he tapped me on the shoulder, which is often something you don't necessarily do, but it was like a we'll be okay kind of thing.
Afterwards?
Yeah, that was when we were in the scrum that day. He gave me and he answered everybody's questions, and he was, he's been very good for that so far. He gave me like a tap on the shoulder. And then when they named Jim Hiller, they did the same thing again. Half the room went to Jim Hiller, half the room went to Chaika. And by the way, they've taken out the public questioning part. So
You put an end to that.
They've eliminated it here for the time being. And so it's like, but in that thing with Chaika, again, he gave me a little tap on the shoulder. And again, I have not yet. I've worked very little this summer. I have not set up a sit down and let's talk kind of thing, which I do almost every time the Leafs hire a new coach or a new GM.
Yeah.
Is you sit down and how do you want to do this, and what what are your rules? What are my rules? How, what's the best relationship going to be? It's funny when Brian Burke was named GM of the Leafs, we went out for lunch right afterwards, and both of us sat there, and Mike Zeisberger, who worked for the Toronto Sun at the time, was also there. And the three of us sat and we said, we need rules. And the rules are, when something bad happens between us, and it's going to happen, we have to be men about this. We have to be professional about it. How are we going to, and we kind of went through a protocol of how we're going to deal with, trouble. So Brian Burke then goes off to Afghanistan on a Goodwill Army tour on July 1st. I can't tell you the year, but it's free agency day. And the new expensive general manager is off, shaking hands and taking pictures in Afghanistan. He should be finding hockey players. And I wrote a column, criticizing him for going on the Goodwill tour when there's 360 days a year you can do it.
Yeah.
There's 5 you can't. And that was one of them. He went apeshit. Like apeshit beyond apeshit. I wish I'd kept the emails, because when you write an email that's so long you have to then finish it in the next email. That's what happened.
So he responded in an email. He didn't call you or leave a voicemail.
No, he didn't. He wrote it this from still, I think, in Afghanistan, and it was like, it wasn't an email, it was a book. And I wrote back, "What about our agreement?" And he wrote, "Fuck our agreement," was the last email I got, and I haven't spoken to him since. This is years later, and when he was fired as Leafs GM, at his press conference, he said one of the things he's happiest about is he doesn't have to talk to me anymore. and the funny thing about it was, when he said that, I had not spoken to him since the Afghanistan thing, so it's like 2 years. I hadn't spoken to him in 2 years, so I wasn't really sure what he was referring to, although in Burke's case, it made for great theater, which is his specialty.
Yeah. And you still haven't talked to him.
Oh, and he's in the press box all the time at, at stuff. He gives me a dirty look, I give him one back, and we go on with our lives.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'll tell you how close we were at one time. I played a small part in his getting hired by the Leafs, and it was Thanksgiving dinner, and he called me from his Thanksgiving dinner in Boston to tell me tomorrow they're going to announce that I'm the general manager. So that's how close our relationship was, that I was involved in sort of pushing him onto the Leafs, and then him thinking enough about it to phone me to tell me that I've got the job. And how many years later, we now look at each other like, each of us is the scourge of the world.
Which man? I'm going to move on real quick, and I appreciate your time, man. This has been great. But which management group has set the Leafs back the most in the last 25 years?
John Ferguson Jr. would be my choice post lockout or even pre-lockout. John Ferguson Jr. was, on paper, was a great choice to be a general manager. He had accomplished everything you could as an assistant GM. He was a lawyer. He was a former player. He's a smart guy. And he got into office, and he melted down like nobody's ever melted down. He just wasn't up for the job. He didn't understand it. He didn't do it properly. And he came out of the lockout, where the Leafs go from no salary cap, which were an advantageous position, to salary cap. And from that point on, I don't have the numbers sitting in front of me. I don't know how many years they missed the playoffs in a row, but it was significant. I figure Fergie's tenure as GM cost the team about $60 million in what should have been playoff revenue.
Yeah, and they made the playoffs when he was the GM at the same time, right? I mean, they just had they
made the playoffs until the lockout.
Yeah.
When they could spend whatever they wanted. When the minute that spending was in control and they started over, he had no sense of what. And the hockey changed, as you well know. Sure. The game changed, rules changed. Leafs had a big, slow team with Fergie when everyone was going small and fast.
Yeah, I feel like he's a guy that would have benefited maybe from a second chance. And who I've known Fergie for a long time. He's a friend, great guy. And I always connect him to Mike Danton because I remember that reporting at the time at the draft in 2003 that he was going to get the Maple Leafs job. He was taking over. Maybe it was before that. I'm trying to remember. And that's when Mike Danton was traded from New Jersey to St. Louis, was at that 2003 draft, talking to a lot of people. I wasn't really familiar with him at the time. Certainly didn't know his backstory the way that you did from his time in junior and his connection to David Frost and all these other guys. It's like Sheldon Keefe, for example, when he got hired, like knowing the story, was that left alone? Did anybody ever ask him about his relationship with Dave? Like, was he still talking to David Frost at that time, talking to Mike Danton? Like, was that ever brought up when Sheldon Keefe took the job in Toronto?
When Sheldon was hired to coach the Marlies, that's before he got the Leaf job, I did about an hour and a half sit down with him. And we talked about almost everything, as much as he would talk about it, because he was very private and very quiet about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I wrote at the time the piece. I don't think it was done much when he got hired by the Leafs, because it was sort of a natural. Babcock fired, bring in the AHL guy, promotion, and I'd already written the piece. There was no point in going back and writing it again.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm surprised that when he went to New Jersey, I'm surprised that with the enterprising reporters down there, that someone hasn't revisited, because he was right in the middle of everything.
I know. And he
he was not in the middle of a murder for hire. I'm talking the prior to any of that. But I go back, Sheldon Keefe and Mike, then Jefferson, and some other guys were playing for the Toronto St. Michael's Majors, and Mike Feuda was the coach. And one day they trade all of them to Barrie. And Terry Koshin was our junior hockey writer at the time, now covers the Leafs. And I said to Terry, what's this deal about? They're in last place. They just traded their 4 best players. Like, what's going on? He says, they want to get away from Frost. I said, who's Frost? He said, you don't want to know. Well, the worst thing you could ever say to me is you don't want to know. So I did something that day that I think it only happened once in my career. I wrote a column about this trade. I rarely ever write junior hockey, but I was fascinated that this team traded their 4 best players away for next to nothing. So I wrote a column about it, and I had an editor named John Crick who read the column and said, you almost have the story, but you don't have it. So I'm going to hold the column. I'd rather you go and find out what all this is about rather than sort of leave people dangling, because that's what you're doing here. So I said, well, take some time and find out who this guy is. I spent a month on it, and I wound up with what I thought was a very, very good piece written in '99 about who is David Frost and what is he doing and who are these kids and all the weirdness that was around at that time. And the amazing thing even back then was nobody wanted to talk to you. Like, people were afraid of Dave Frost. People did not want to be, criticizing him. And I talked to family. I talked to, the billets. I remember that talking to one of the billets. It was I think it was Mike Jefferson's billet in Sarnia. And she was talking about the weird relationship between Mike and Dave.
Yeah.
And this is a parent who's putting a teenage boy in her home. And when the whole thing happened, when he was arrested at San Jose Airport years later in the murder for hire thing, the only thing anyone had on David Frost really was the takeout I had done a number of years earlier. So the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times and the Washington Post and all these papers that I've grown up drooling about were rewriting my Dave Frost piece. And it was funny. There's a woman named Selena Roberts who worked for the New York Times, and she wrote her David Frost piece using all my quotes and crediting the Toronto Star, which is our opposition, all the way through. Yeah. So the great New York Times did not distinguish itself in that moment.
No, they didn't do their due diligence. Yeah, that was and because I remember when he was traded to St. Louis and talking to some people, and I did a radio interview for KMOX from the draft, and they were like, "Hey, tell us about this guy, Mike Danton. He's pretty feisty, pretty aggressive. He may get in a scrap or two in training camp." And I said, "Well, by the sounds of it, from talking to people here at the draft, he may fight Joel Quenneville on the ice." So it's like because he had just been suspended from, New Jersey, and like it just, kind of had that reputation. Jamal Mayers, who does the show with me each week, he was on that Blues team. I was just talking to him. He was just in here before you came on, and they asked him to go to dinner every single night throughout the entire season, every night, every day, off day, whatever, come out with us. Because the teams would do that. That team would do a lot of team dinners, and they'd have two tables of 16 players. And he would never come. He never once came. And so they obviously felt that it was very odd. What'd you think of the show on HBO Max? I mean, I assume you had a chance to watch Game Day Murders.
To be honest, and I'm saying this about a show that I've had a part in, I was disappointed.
Mm.
I thought it was surface. I thought there was stuff missing that should have been told. I was, I don't know what you thought. You're in there too. I was expecting more, to be perfectly honest, and I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, I thought it just told the story of what happened in that particular couple of days. He was playing, then he got arrested, and then he was charged, and then he went to jail. It was
the best thing they had in there was that FBI agent.
Yeah.
He was, to me, that was, him being at the game where he scores the goal in the playoffs, and then being the investigative officer of the case. I thought that was interesting. But, would I have loved to hear from Steve Jefferson? Would I have loved to hear from
Katie Wolfmeyer?
Sheldon Keefe? Would I have loved to hear from Katie Wolfmeyer?
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of people I would have, like Joel Quenneville.
Yeah, so teammates.
You know who his roommate was, by the way? He's now the general manager of the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, they put his picture up. They had a picture, and Ryan Johnson was his roommate for a good portion of the season, but then for whatever reason, that particular road trip, it was Mark Rycroft, who's a broadcaster with the Colorado Avalanche. So they were banging on Mark Rycroft's door. The FBI, after Mike had already snuck out the back door, which, talking to some security people, they still can't believe that he got out of the hotel. Considering the FBI was coming to get him. But they put a picture up on the screen of when they were playing one of the jailhouse calls between David and Mike, and they had a picture, a split screen of David Frost, and then the other, they thought it was Mike Danton, but it was Ryan Johnson. So I sent this picture to RJ the other day, and I'm like, RJ, like they have you as Mike Danton on this. He's like, what is this? So I think and I contacted one of the producers that said, hey, you made a mistake. And I think the Vancouver Canucks are making sure this gets corrected too, because they have the GM of the team now as Mike Danton on the documentary.
The last time I'm on the screen in the documentary, we're talking about the trial in Napanee, Ontario, when Dave Frost was on trial for sexual exploitation. And they have me saying that I got in my car, drove away, and I cried. Well, that clip is accurate. The clip came out of an interview with Tom Jefferson. Had nothing to do with the trial. I went to interview Tom Jefferson, got in my car, and as I drove away, I started to cry.
And that's Mike's brother.
Yeah. And it had nothing to do with the trial at all. And they took it and used it out of I wrote them the next day saying, this is a cheap way to do something.
Yeah, because I took it as you got emotional because he got off.
Yeah, no, but by the time he got off, everybody in the courtroom knew he was getting off.
Yeah.
Like, if you had been around the trial, it was pretty obvious. The lawyer for the government was so overmatched that it was, the other thing they didn't do, and they didn't reference that that the Goodnow kid was Bob Goodnow's son, right, and the whole relationship therein.
Yeah, that's how he got the certification to become an agent.
And the fact that Bob Goodnow's son was estranged from his dad, like there's parts of stories that to me were just untold and missing, and Sheldon's name never even, I don't believe, ever came up.
No, and Ryan Barnes, one of the players too, back in the day, he's a a successful agent now, representing a lot of players. So I remember going to Katie Wolfmeyer's house after she was acquitted. And I don't want to say they had a party, but it was a celebration there. There's no doubt. But then watching this back over, it's several years later. Like I'm watching the trial. I'm in the trial. I'm in the courtroom every single day, talking to her attorneys and and the people, the main players in the case and whatnot. I kind of like felt a little sorry for her. And then watching this story back, I'm like, God, I can't believe she got off. I mean, she literally drove the guy to
Well,
carry out this hit,
she got off because I think she was the witness they needed to tell everything, that they were looking for. Um, you know, the very thought, and this has struck with me when I was writing it in the book and when I wrote it in the newspapers and when I heard it. The very fact that you go to the girl from Jogenfruz, and by the way, can you find someone to kill someone for me? I mean, is there anything more preposterous than asking a teenage girl who sells yogurt to find someone to kill someone?
Well, she worked at the rink.
Yeah, well, that was the Jogenfruz.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't believe that either. But just think if Ronald Jones, who had the greatest line in the trial, who said, hey, what was your reaction when Mike Danton offered you $10,000 to carry this out? He said, $10,000, I won't even pay for my lawyer, and then everybody laughed in the courtroom. But what if he would have taken him up on his offer? I mean, David, he may have carried it out, and all of a sudden, Mike would be looking at a way more serious crime. And,
Oh.
that would have been, and David Frost would have been dead. I remember several years ago.
I've got to stop you for one second. What I also was disappointed in the documentary was there's almost no reference to the fact that his entire life and his entire dream was getting to the NHL.
Mhm.
And after this happened, he never played another game
Right.
in the NHL. And he lost his career and he became persona non grata.
Yeah.
I have a letter somewhere from Bill Wirtz, who was then, I believe, chairman of the board of the NHL, the late crazy owner of the Chicago Blackhawks, calling this the most disgraceful episode in hockey history. It's, this, and it's funny, it's amazing to me also now how many people don't even know this happened.
Oh
Like,
my God! People, that's what I heard from. I had no idea. I did not know about this. There's a whole generation of people who didn't know about it. Have you
Yeah.
talked to Mike? I mean, do we know if Sue and Steve Jefferson are still alive? Like, I haven't been in contact with them for years.
But for me, I forget. I wrote the book 15 years ago. And I used to talk to Steve once or twice a year.
Mhm.
Sue's always quiet. So for the last conversation I think I had with Sue was at the book launch. And so I haven't seen him or Steve in years. I'm understanding that they're still living, out in Ayr, Ontario, and again, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what last I heard.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's still working or retired. I think he's the same age I am, so possibly retired. So I've seen them in years. I don't know where Dave Frost is. I had heard he was in California at one time. Then I heard he was in British Columbia. And I also heard he had taken his wife's last name.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw
Polly.
my story back in like 2010, where I got a tip from a few hockey families in Southern California that he was running this off-ice training facility in Southern California, using he had under an alias. He was using his wife's last name as his last name, and I called up there, just cold call. I mean, his voice is as clear as day in terms of who it is when he talks, and reported that he was running this, and he had a Mike Danton jersey in the gym, like one NHL player hanging in the gym. So he didn't give it away and he was Mike Danton's jersey hanging in the gym. So I reported that he was running this off-ice facility under using an alias, and he had to shut it down. He shut it down within days of that report coming out. So that's the last I heard of him, and I don't know where he's gone since then, if he's still in Southern California or if he's back up in Canada. I have no idea.
Mike is in Nova Scotia. Mike lives in Nova Scotia. I believe he has a couple of kids.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's married. I do know he's teaching kids hockey.
He is.
And he runs hockey schools. So, I'm not so sure as a parent, that'd be my first choice to send him to the Mike Danton hockey school, but apparently that's what he's into, and God bless him. Everybody's got to make a living somehow.
Yeah. I actually liked Mike a lot when I covered him that year, and there's a sense of people feeling, I think, bad for him or sorry for him. Like this was his only way out was to rid himself of David Frost for whatever reason. Like you talk to other players at the time and even now, um, that there's no way that an agent would be able to control them or staying in their house when they come in town. I mean, they would just say, "Hey, get out of here. You're fired." He couldn't move on from them. And for whatever reason, that control was too heavy. And this was his only way out of getting separated from David Frost, which is so unfortunate because it did ruin his hockey career.
The craziest part of the story for me is you finally find the person that you think will kill Dave Frost. And you set the thing up and you put the money in envelopes in the safe and you got everything set up a certain way and it's all to be done. And you get arrested. And the first phone call you make from prison
Is Dave.
is to Dave Frost.
So crazy.
And you're telling each other on the phone, "Do you still love me? I love you."
Yeah.
And it's just creepy conversation. But it tells you how much control he had on his life. And at the time, I think Sheldon was playing in the AHL. And I think he was spending about half the year living in Sheldon's condo in whatever AHL city he was playing as a Tampa farmhand. And the other half, in St. Louis with Mike. There is no story like this. There will never be another one like this. You can't invent these characters and you can't invent the way the story, played out. It's just, as you well know, one of the most, influential people involved in it for the whole way through is, I could not, as I said, in every time I've ever been interviewed about it, could not have invented this because no one would have believed it.
No, you're 100% right. And there's so many layers to it. I remember Dave getting me in touch with this attorney out of California, and he was sending all blues players like emails asking for contributions to a criminal defense fund. So he was asking for money from all these players, like 50 grand from like Keith Kachuk and Chris Pronger, everybody. And I remember Pronger's line was, "Why would I turn good money into bad money?" You know how Pronger talks. So it's like, I mean, and then I do research on this attorney who I'm talking to, and like he's got a track record. He was disbarred from the California bar and whatnot. So I mean, everybody involved had some type of crooked past and some type of crooked history. So you couldn't make it up. To your point, it was unbelievable. And I thought,
what I've been hearing ever since is the real story will come out. And Dave Frost is going to tell his story, and Mike's going to tell his story. And, the only time Mike has done a sit-down interview that I'm aware of is he did one with Nick Kyprios after he got out of prison. And he lied all the way through it. And God bless Nick, who's turned into a pretty good media guy, but he was pretty new at it at that point.
yeah.
He never challenged him on any of the answers.
No, I love Nick, and I remember watching that at the time too, and it was kind of softballs, but I don't think he really knew the whole history in the background. I think it was more about getting him to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
But you just kind of Mike was allowed to kind of carry the conversation and share his narrative, which was still probably being controlled by Dave.
When Mike was saying that, it was my dad who was targeted, I mean, it's the most nonsensical, thing you could ever say. They had been estranged. How would his dad be in his apartment? How would his
Yeah, but he showed Ronald Jones. He gave him a picture of David Frost, though. Too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's come on, we're not. So the fact that he continues to say that, I think eventually maybe he will talk. I think if somebody pays him a lot of money to talk, I think he'll talk. But they got to have the right people involved and around to make sure that he's telling the truth and he's giving the real story. If he's not going to tell the truth, then why would you pay him to tell a fake story that nobody should believe?
I honestly thought, and I still think, that this should have been a movie.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a great movie. And I have had two different entertainment companies who have bought options on the book over the years. One out of Los Angeles had a 5-year option, and after 3 years, they dropped the option. It renews every year, and now I'm in the mid. I have what company now that's also attempted to do something from Entered, and they went at it a little bit differently. They're more interested. They were more interested in like a 5 or 6 part series kind of thing, like that you see often on Netflix and networks like that.
Yeah.
But again, it's never gotten to a point of somebody saying, yeah, I want to do this. Someone outside of the people who've bought the option. So we've had a lot of meetings, and we've had a lot of talk, and we've had a lot of ideas thrown around. And one of the smartest or dumbest things I did when I signed the contract for this book was I kept the movie rights. The publisher didn't. Now, of course, this has made me zero money in the past 15 years.
Well, let's get the movie going, Steve.
I've got that Chris Pronger bad money stuff happening here. But I honestly believe I see a lot of movies. I think, how does that movie get made? I mean, I always thought opening scene, first scene in the movie, the Sharks are playing the Blues in the playoffs. It's between periods. And Danny walks to the back of the dressing room in full equipment to sit down at the stalls with his cell phone. And here you are in the midst of the Stanley Cup playoffs and all the excitement, and he's on the phone in the back of in the washroom in his equipment, phoning to arrange the hit of Dave Frost. I thought, what a perfect way to start the movie, and then go in all different directions from there. I'm not a movie maker. That was always in my brain as a possible scene.
Okay, I like it. And then Katie's on the Jumbotron. Like nobody was showing up at the rink with a Mike Danton shirt, just so you know. Like, and then she's the one tried. It's just incredible.
We love Danton on the front, and I slept with him on the back, I think is what it said.
We didn't get to see the back, Steve.
Yes, okay.
All right, great
So we
stuff.
don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know if that's actually true.
Yeah, no, we don't know. All right, we could go on for another hour. But I appreciate it. Good stuff. And maybe we'll pick this conversation up one day. Maybe there's another layer of it that'll come out eventually, and we'll see when Mike talks. If you hear from Dave or anybody, let me know. So
I will. And that's one thing I just wanted to point out. Sheldon Keefe's brother Adam,
he's an up and coming coach too.
The coach in Great Britain and has been for many years, has always been tight with Dave. I don't know if he remains that way. I know Sheldon and Dave are sort of no more.
No, I know,
but I don't know Sheldon's brother, who he's very close to, has also been tight close to Dave.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I know some people that played with Adam actually over in England or played against him over in England too. So, I mean, and I know now he's coaching. Yeah, that's a good question. And that's not as hard to get an answer to, I mean, he's kind of accessible. He's out there. He's coaching, so.
I thought if I had been at the Winter Olympics this year in Milan, it was the first Winter Olympics I hadn't been at like 30 years. And if I had been there and Great Britain was in those Olympics playing, I would have tracked down.
Was he coaching the Olympic team?
I think he was an assistant coach on the Olympic team.
Okay.
And I think he's an assistant coach on the national team, if there is in fact a national team program that he is.
Yeah. Steve, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Be well.
Okay, you too. Take care. All right, so that was Steve Simmons. We appreciate him for joining us. Jamal Mayers for joining us. We could have gone on for another hour. We had to get going. But anyway, interesting. Check out the documentary, HBO Max, Game Day Murders, which is it's a 4 or 5 part series. So watch all the other ones too on HBO Max. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it told the story in the given parameters and the timeline they had to tell it. I don't know if you're going to get a lot of former teammates to talk and some of this other stuff, but still interesting nonetheless. First Community brings us Hockey Sense each and every week. Here live from Half Coast Studios. Check it out. Find the branch nearest you. Sign your son or daughter up for the Little Blues program. And again, a big shout out to First Community, the jersey sponsor of SIU Edwardsville. All sports across the board. So great job there. Laura, great job. Glenn Barks, everybody over there with First Community. Of course, Blue Note Roofing, 314-920-5713. Call David Novak today. Lordo's Diamonds, stop on in to Lordo's Diamonds. Get that special someone, something special in your life, 314-432-8008, right there in the heart of Ladue. Better get Mako, get your car repaired. Visit the Kirkwood location for Mako and do that today. Dirt Cheap Fun, your one-stop party shop. Download the app. Dirt Cheap Fun, your one-stop party shop. Download that app today. And find out all the great deals that they have. They've got that walk-in beer cooler. So many locations. Best selection of beer, wine, and booze you're going to find anywhere. Discounts on Blues game days, by the way. And Easy Tiger Cannabis. EasyTigerAZ.com. Top shelf cannabis. If you're dealing with any type of medical issue, sleep issue, anxiety, talk to the professionals with Easy Tiger and see if they can prescribe something that can certainly help you and benefit your life. EasyTigerAZ.com. All right, that does it. For Aiden, for Jamal Mayers, for Steve Simmons from the Toronto Sun, I'm Andy Strickland, reminding you to keep your head up and your stick on the ice. We'll do it again next week, all summer long, here on Hockey Sense, as well as the Cam and Strick podcast. Have a great weekend, everybody.